This episode of the Blerd Mob contains explicit language. While we want everyone to enjoy the show, sometimes we may say things that are not appropriate for all ages. So, in other words, Mom, Dad, Granny, we cussing. Discretion is advised.
King G, Grow Site, ENT. Rock with it, rock with it, rock with it, rock with it. Let me pop my shit. Let me pop my shit. Hands up.
What's up, y'all, and welcome to the Blerd Mob, your hub for all things black and nerdy. I am your host, Phthp. If you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other streaming service, make sure you hit that follow button so you can get updates from the mob. Today, we have a very special episode for you, strictly not on the books for Season 1. We're going to be talking about the League of Legends Netflix series, Arcane. So joining the mob today, I got my boy McMillian from Gurren Otaku Council, and my boy Ryun is back. So what's up, y'all?
What is good, citizens of Piltover? What is up?
What's up?
I'm coming in from the upper city, high class, you know what I'm saying? Don't know about y'all folks at the bottom, in the slums.
Not in the slums. But I am very excited to talk about this series. I have watched it twice in the span of a week. And I have to say that this has easily climbed its way to the top of my favorite animated series. So,
it's personally for me, it's my favorite animated series of this year so far.
If we want to put it in that retrospect, it is also my top animated series of the year.
When did Invincible come out?
This year.
I love this. I liked Invincible more though.
Understandable.
But that's
I
because
don't know.
of my,
I think it's
like
the
dark
fact
shit.
that I watched Arcane twice. I have to put it up there.
It's one scene that takes the cake.
It's multiple scenes.
I'm just saying that one, and we're gonna get to it, but that one scene, it's over. All of it.
I feel you. But we're definitely going to get more into it. So, We're going to split this up into two sections, guys. We're going to do a non-spoiler critique for those who have not seen Arcane, or for those who are watching Arcane and are not finished with the series yet. And then we're going to go into the spoiler section of our review. So, for those who have not seen Arcane, I'll make sure I do a countdown before we get into the spoiler section, so you can stop and then finish watching it and come back. So to get into our non-spoiler critique, I have two questions. One, how did we feel about the season overall? And the second question is, what grabbed you the most about the series? So to start with the first question from me, I'm with McMillian. This is a 10 out of 10 for me. I watched it twice in the span of a week. I think I started it last week, really got into it last week. Finished it maybe 2 days later. And then I was like, you know what? I think I'll watch it again. But I thoroughly enjoyed the storytelling, the themes of the show that they were exploring, and the development of the characters. I cared for everyone. Maybe some more than others, but you definitely felt, for me, I definitely felt for all of the characters in the series. Sometimes I wanted to cry with or for these characters. That's how good the development it was. I think the voice actors in this series did an excellent job portraying the emotion behind the characters. Big kudos to Ella Purnell, who played Jinx. That was an outstanding performance, given everything that Jinx is in this series. Big kudos. Portraying that type of Yes, the voice, portraying that type of emotion and portraying that type of character, and not even physically acting as the character, just doing the voice, just being in a box reading a script. Big kudos. Big kudos. Love the animation style and the use of modern music, which we don't see a lot in animated series. Most of the time they make their own music, or if they do create a song, they create a song that's in the theme of the show. But this, even starting with the intro, the Imagine Dragons intro, just gives you, it had a nice vibe to it. And it fit, in the times where they did play the music, fit very well with the scene or the emotion they were trying to portray. I also like the maturity aspect of the cartoon. I don't know much about League of Legends. I said this in episode 8. So I really didn't know what to expect coming from this animated series. But the themes that they portrayed, along with the seriousness of it, they pulled no punches, showing us anything in the show of how brutal the world is, how brutal the characters can get, as well as they did a good job portraying the emotion with profanity, but not like somebody's whole dialogue is cuss words.
That's right. Yeah.
So they did a very good job with that. I don't even think they cursed all of the series. I think it may have been like the 4th episode where Vi drops an F-bomb, and I was like, oh, I'm with it. It fit. She slid it in there real smooth. I'm good. But those are that is definitely all the things that I liked about this series. This definitely gets a food stamp of approval. I might watch it again. But what about you guys?
You want to go next?
Y'all go next. So I did absolutely love this series. However, I would give this series a 10 out of 10 because I know this could appeal to almost anybody who is a fan of good TV series with great plot, great story building. I even love the theme and the setting. I think this setting would be considered steampunk, which is like Victorian era industrial age Europe, but it's more so like it's technically like a fantasy sub-genre, sub-theme. I love the fact that they use this theme. The art really unique. I'm assuming it pays homage to the art style of League of Legends. Jay, I'm not very sure, but the art style for the and the animation, very very lovely, very unique. It's not your traditional 2D cartoons or 2D mixed with 3D animations that you see in anime, like say the old Pokemon movies. It was very unique. I did. I'm gonna be honest. I did love the series, and every part that should have pulled a heartstring did pull them. But I don't know if this is a good analogy. It didn't pull them as far as other series may have. Now, could it have been because I've watched a lot of darker series in this past year, a lot of series that have really strong emotional tones, and I prefer those? Probably. I'm not sure. But I would also agree that this series is a 10 out of 10. I know we're going to get into more of the details and the spoiler stuff, but like I'm pretty sure we're already going to announce that episode 3, really intense turnaround episode. It didn't pull my heartstrings as far as other series or other movies may have. Going to be completely honest. Loved it. I feel like they did everything right. Not gonna lie, I feel like they did everything right. I like you said, Portia, I feel for every character. Jinx is my favorite character because I hate her. She is my favorite character because I hate her. To be honest, I feel like I'm gonna love her even more in the next season. But it didn't pull my personal heartstrings that far. But it was really good. I would definitely say this is a 10. Like, before we even get into the nitty gritty, I would give this a 10 out of 10 series. Out of all the animated series that have been out this year, let alone in the past decade that I've watched, this is a guaranteed watch. Definitely watch it. If you don't like it, I'd love to see why you don't like it. But I agree with it. It was a very great series in every aspect.
I agree.
Your two questions were what grabbed us and what
Your
why we
overall.
my
Well,
overall
I
opinion on it.
started with the overall first,
Okay,
and
so
then
we're
I
just
was
doing
gonna
overall.
go.
Okay, cool. I just want to make
Did
sure.
I do what grabbed me? I'm not
No,
sure.
We're gonna
I
come
think I
back.
did
I think
overall.
we're doing
back to
overall, and then okay. So I just want to make sure.
Okay.
So overall, if you are a fan of Gurren Otaku Council, you know one thing about McMillian, and that he loves character stories. Arcane at its center it's a masterclass at world building, but the reason for me specifically why it does it so, it's characters. Its characters
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
are A grade top tier material of an example of nothing is created from a vacuum. Something has to come from something. These characters are products of their environment. They're products of like everything around them has an impact on them, and they have an impact on it itself. And it's so fun to watch this show and see the strings all connect and assemble. I
Yes.
love when stuff like that happens. And to me, that's what really truly makes it like a 10 out of 10 and a must watch. Like even if you're not a League of Legends fans, for instance, like Phthp and Ryan, you will like this show, in my opinion, if you like good narrative structure and good character. It
Most
does
definitely.
that perfectly. If you're a fan of Into the Spider-Verse, you will love it for its animation quality as well. This is another example. I hope Into the Spider-Verse, and this show specifically, solidifies the dynamic type of animation we want moving forward, because the way they told stories with their animation as well, so interesting. Episode 7 specifically has my favorite scene, and it plays with the animation to tell a story between two characters.
Mm-hmm.
Just like how like Into the Spider-Verse told us, had like the falling from a skyscraper scene to tell the story of like Miles rising to the occasion of being Spider-Man, even though he was falling down backwards. Like you got to see him rise though through the animation style. Like there's so much around this show, and you could tell that the people making it were really trying to make something special, and they really were able to capture lightning out of a bottle. Like for me, that's why it's a 10/10. Just like Phthp, I rewatched it twice, had no qualms about it. Even on I would say this, on my second watch, I noticed a lot more as well.
McMillian, are you crying?
I have no idea why my eyes are watering right now. So I don't know if this is like power.
Look, that series touched him.
Hey, he is feeling this show. Yeah.
Look,
McMillian is feeling this show.
I have no idea
100
why
out
my
of
eyes
10.
are watering. But
oh man, I was like, damn, my boy.
He's crying like you really loved it.
Regardless of, I do really like this show, but that I don't even know. That's not why I'm crying. I have no idea why there are tears coming out of my eyes right now. I am very tired, but so that might have been it as well.
Oh my god, I was like, oh man.
But besides that, because that's hilarious, definitely give this. If you have not seen it, please go do. If my tears didn't convince you,
if his tears did not convince you to go watch Arcane, I don't know what would.
And if I can respond, McMillian really touched on something. The characters alone in this show, let me tell y'all something. I felt like I could find somebody in the world with so many similar characteristics to each of these characters. That's how real they were.
Mm-hmm.
The way they reacted, the way they talked, like McMillian said, like how they're products of their environment. If you study just even a little bit of psychology and sociology, and you see just how these characters react to different events, that's a spoiler. Vi's character and the way that some things don't change for her because of the situations. Even something as simple as that, when you know people going through those situations, everything felt so genuine and very real, especially if you know people like this. And the characters alone, yes. The character building alone, yes.
I was just going to say
yes.
that the creators of this series, you can tell that they took their time and they cared about this series. Like sometimes we watch animated series or sometimes we watch live action shows where it doesn't feel like the creators of the show didn't really care about the characters that we were watching, or they cared about them up to a point. But every detail, and I agree with McMillian, the animation style definitely adds that icing on the cake with the storytelling, because the animation plays in with the in the detail of it in certain scenes. And to not give away too many spoilers, the way that the animation style changed in certain moments to have certain moments hit harder than they would have with the original style going in. So. But to go into what grabbed us the most about the series, I have to start with episode 3 to not give away too many spoilers. But the first time I watched it, shit didn't hit the fan for me until episode 3. When I watched it the second time, I did appreciate the first 2 episodes more. But Arcane really didn't like snatch me up by my shirt until episode 3. That's where I was saying, was like, they did not pull any punches with this series, and it starts there. Like, everything is building up. We're meeting the characters. We're getting introduced to everybody. But that, and we're gonna get into it later, but that episode alone was like, this is what you're getting into. Strap on. Now we're in the ride. The other thing that grabbed me about the series is that not only that episode, but there were so many twists and turns in this series that it was like there were moments where I knew something was going to happen. Like somebody screwed, or this is going to happen, like the oh no moments. But when the moments actually came and it turned out to be something completely different than what I thought it was, I was like, okay, you got me. So, and then like I said, the second time watching it, I guess I started seeing a greater appreciation for the show and the characters. Like McMillian and Ryun mentioned, really seeing that these characters are products of their environment and how the actions of people before them affected the people that they are now, and how their actions are affecting people in the environments and the situations going forward. And I think they did an excellent job with doing that. And I also want to bring up something that we stated in episode 8, was that the pacing. One of our biggest pet peeves were the pacing of a series. And with 9 episodes, they did a really good job at pacing this. From beginning to end, nothing felt rushed, nothing felt missing, nothing felt half-assed or slightly explained. Every single detail, every single question, every situation was given the fair amount of attention that it needed to contribute to this overarching story. And watching it the second time, I gained a greater appreciation of what that series was trying to do. So, who's next?
You know what's funny, Portia? So to the audience, Portia and Jay, basically they were talking about it, and I was like, okay, if it's that good, let me try it out. And they kept on talking about episode 3. Honestly, honestly, I was hooked on episode 1. Now the reason why, when I really enjoy a series, the first thing I do is I imagine myself living in the world. And when I watched episode 1, and you see since we're not doing spoilers, I'm not even going to try to give away too many names. When you're seeing the middle class, upper class area, and that's where you start off, then you dip down into the ghetto and the slums, and the characters are literally walking through, and you're seeing every aspect, the discount stands with food, the prostitution, and you see how mature and realistic the world actually is. The second I saw that, I said I want to see more of this world. That's what honestly drew me in. And then seeing even just the fact that when we get to the I guess you could say the headquarters of the main characters or the original headquarters, just seeing like one little dynamic of trade and seeing how one character got respect, these characters are like children to this one character, and seeing all those interesting dynamics, the world alone had me hooked. I said I'm going to finish this series regardless off of episode 1. Now, episode 3 was good. And episode 3 was good. I'll definitely say if you watch episode 1 and 2 and you're like, oh, it's cool, I don't see what they're talking about, then definitely see episode
I
3
think
and
that
you
should
will
be the
surely be
selling
hooked.
point. Like, if you're
Yeah.
gonna recommend this to anybody, watch the first 3 episodes and then come back and let me know what's up.
So what's funny
Facts.
about that is normally when I watch a TV show, I have a 3-episode rule. 3 to 5 episodes is like, you got 3 to 5 episodes to sell me. Because sometimes I know some shows can be a little bit slow, so sometimes I'll give it like a 5 episode. But usually I'm like, sell me in 3 episodes. For me, what's odd about this series is I used to play League, so I already had like somewhat of an attachment to it, but also at the same time, I wasn't the biggest fan of League. So when it first hit Netflix, I was like, oh, cool, they made a Netflix show based on like the League of Legends lore. I'll come back to it. It got popular, and like I had coworkers telling me to check it out and do all this, and I'm like, you know what? One of my roommates, sat me down and we watched like the first episode together. And I'm like, oh, this looks pretty cool, pretty interesting. I think it was by the second episode where I started to get more like into the characters and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, all right, it's slow burn, slow burn, slow burn. I'm learning everything about it. I'm learning about the underbelly, the up top. I'm learning about these characters and how like, well, not to get into the events, but like how one character's action resulted in another character having to deal with some other stuff, and they don't even know each other. I'm like, this is a world where I'm getting introduced to a world. That was the first thing that like grabbed me and was like, Jay, pay attention. Episode 3 is the thing that was like, oh, we are along for a ride.
Hello, strap in.
This is a roller coaster now.
Please keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle at all times.
And then
Highway to hell.
And it was one I was blindfolded to because we were going up the track, and then the fall came, and I didn't see the fall. They tricked me.
That's what I'm saying. The twists and the turns in this series were very. You thought you knew, but you did not know what you did not know.
and like you said, folks, rewatching it, you gain a more understanding or appreciation of the first episode. I think specifically because everything that you see, you're able to connect the threads of all of it. I feel like when you rewatch it, like from the beginning, you gain appreciation for that really small start, the spark of everything, and it's like crazy.
Exactly
how they traveled throughout. But I think the second episode where you get to see the first intertwinement is what really sold me on the series. Is what made me want to stay because I am big on world building and characters, and that was like the first big example of like this is a show that's going to focus specifically on those two elements and intertwine them together because that's how you do good. In my opinion, that's how you do. That's how you do good storytelling. Is that you have a world and you have these characters and they are just as impactful on each other as anything else. They can't exist without the other. Is how I like to see stuff like this. So that's what really grabbed me. But 3 is definitely what was like, you are watching this and nothing else for a while. Okay.
Yes.
That was the sit down was like that. I mean, I got sat down, and 3 was like, I gotta see how this ends. So I would say if Arcane episode 1 and 2 is not hidden for you, wait till 3 and see how you feel. And if 3's not it, then this series probably not for you, unfortunately. But I honestly would love to hear, like Ryan said earlier, I would love to hear how that doesn't grab me.
I would like to hear the argument. I would love to hear the argument.
Same. you will sit before the three the three Arcane acolytes, and you will tell us why you like this series.
Why you
But
don't like?
Because arguably, I got the most negative opinion of this series that it didn't pull my heartstrings too far. I think I'm the only one who got somewhat of a negative opinion,
yeah,
and that's not even negative.
that's no, because I mean, people feel different stuff for different things.
Yeah.
So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that's a big negative. But I was
Right.
going to say, going back to McMillian's 3-episode rule, if you don't want to use this rule for anything else, please use it for this series. Please.
Yes.
So that is our non-spoiler critique of Arcane. So we're going to get into the spoilers. So 3, 2, 1. So how I want to do the spoilers, you guys, I want to get into some character dynamic deep dives. We're going to talk about some highlights, because there are several. And then Arcane did get approved for season 2.
For season 2.
So we are going to talk about what we are expecting going forward.
I should have wore a blue t-shirt.
I wanted to buy League of Legends merch. No, okay, hold on, wait. People at home, look at me. Look at me. I am right now planning to get the cloud tattoos somewhere. I don't know where.
Just get them all over your body.
Huh?
Just all over your body.
And I thought I would be getting cloud tattoos for the Akatsuki, but honestly, Jinx.
No, blue clouds.
Those
blue clouds, Jay.
I gotta pay homage to the GOAT. Oh my god. Like,
I need at least a statue or something now.
Yeah.
At least some type of statue.
Because we're into spoilers now, if I could get any statue, I have to get the statue with that big ass shark ass bazooka that she shot at the end.
That'll be my second favorite one. I need the gun turn. I need when she was on that ship and just jumped in shooting everybody up. I need that one. I just need that.
I just find it so funny. I find it so funny, so mentally unstable that her weapon of choice was this fat ass machine gun.
It fit. It fit her perfectly. I couldn't see her. Now that I saw her with a turn, I can't see her with nothing else.
Wow, they're not controllable.
Nothing else.
I want to say this before we get into the character deep dives. The funniest thing about Powder for me, I'm watching episode 1, and Vi tells Powder, you're like, it's all right. You're not a fighter. You know, you invent your little monkey bombs, and I'll fight with my fist. We get to episode 2, and she's playing this shooting game with Milo, and basically just dominates him in the shooting game. I immediately text McMillian, and I was like, "Oh, so Powder don't fight because she like to shoot folks." She's not a fighter because she a shooter.
But I mean, I feel like, but I mean, before we get into character, I feel like anybody could identify with that type of feeling or that type of thing, like where you had a friend, you might have been a part of a friend group that excelled, they all had a similar type of like they excelled at this thing, but you had like a different route and it just didn't fit. So you felt like you were lesser when in reality you had the skill set. It was just something completely different. Like that was one of the big things. I was like, I like stuff like that, like because that's so. I think anybody could relate to that.
No, I feel that. And R.I.P. my boy Milo, because he was right. He was right. Everybody gets mad at the asshole. Everybody hates the asshole. I mean, sometimes you gotta listen.
We wish he would shut up, though. We do wish he would shut up. But I want to start with the first character dynamic, and it's focused on 4 characters. Vi and Vander versus Jinx and Silco. So the theme that I felt going through them is like, I am my father's daughter type trope. And starting with episode 1, when we first meet Vander and they're on the bridge and everybody, they fall up. It is implied that they have gotten into a confrontation with the enforcers, and unfortunately they lost. A lot of people died. Vander, and when I saw this the second time, my first impression of Vander was like, he's about to take these kids. You got this big burly ass man taking these kids, and I was like, I got a funny feeling that this might not go right for them. Like, this might turn into one of those things where he just guilt trips the kids for the rest of the series because I saved you on this bridge from dying. But the second time I watched it, Vander's thing was that he was a fighter. But when he took custody of Vi and Powder, he put his big fisticuffs down and he started becoming that father figure. And then it was the same thing with Silco, but Silco's stuff is a bit more manipulative and toxic. But when Silco took Jinx, I was like, eventually he did, but I was like, he's about to turn her into a weapon. But at the end of the series, though he did turn her into a weapon, you felt that sense of he did care for her in his own way. And my favorite scene from that father dynamic for both of them is that episode 9, Silco is drinking at Vander's statue in the middle of the Undercity. And he understood because Jace has given Silco the ultimatum of, I will give you your nation of Zon, but you have to give me Jinx. Which parallels back to Grayson talking to Vander, saying, we will let this all go. You just need to give me one person. And he refused to give up Vi, as well as he refused to just find some random person in the Undercity and give them up. So going back to episode 9, going back to Silco, my favorite thing of this scene, where he finally understood the choice Vander has to make, he says, is there anything so undoing as a daughter? And I was like, that's the parallel. It's like, you get it. You get it now, but it's too late. You got it. You passed the test, but it's too late now. And that was one of my favorite parallels from the series. But what I want to go into for this dynamic is the time skip. So Vander dies, we have the time skip, and you see a lot of Vander in Vi. And as well as you see a lot of Silco's influence on Jinx. So it's kind of that how they grew up at that point and how they started interacting. It kind of felt like, even though we didn't see it, I feel like this was like our second live introduction into what went down between Vander and Silco. But we're seeing it through Vi and Jinx. Did anybody else get that type vibe?
You said, hold on, repeat.
That they were telling, so as we know, Vander and Silco got into this big fight. And they split off. Mm-hmm. But we don't know why they split off. We don't know what actually happened. We just know they got into this big ass fight. I felt like that story of their differences and why they split up in the first place was being told between Jinx and Vi. Because you see a lot of Vander and a lot of Silco in those two characters.
And
it kind of plays homage to a lot of old school phrases like generational curses and suffering from the sins of your own parents, and history repeats itself, because there was a lot of similar dynamics. And so I definitely see exactly where you're coming from, because I honestly didn't even think about it that way, but referencing back to the series, now I could see that a little bit too. They'll pretty much having to suffer from the decisions of their own fathers somewhat.
I don't disagree with that, but I also think another thing that I caught on my second watch to illustrate this parallel, I think that just like how Silco was talking about, oh, we're gonna remake you into Jinx, like you're gonna be reborn as this strong person, just like I was in these very waters. Mm-hmm. And Vander at one point tried to take on the Overcity, the type, the basically the rich people of the rich society of Piltover. and we see that him and Silco were fighting at one point. I almost want to say maybe Vander was the loose cannon when he was younger, and Silco was like his reins. And the fact that Silco wasn't willing to go as far is what was the tipping point in their relationship. But just like Silco said, I'm glad you helped me see my weakness so I could root it out, changed him to be more aggressor, while Vander became more docile because he realized you can't you can't get everything, of course. There's because it's gonna cause you to give up too much.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if the parallels with that in their daughters is that Vi eventually I think realizes what Vander was talking about, because you at a point in the show she gets what she wants. She gets to go all out and destroy one of Silco's factories and stuff like that, and then we see the ramifications of that, and like I'm just like, Vi, you are doing the exact thing Silco is doing, just in a different manner.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if you're realizing that.
I don't think so.
You're coming in here and I don't think she truly realized everything that happened until the end. But in that moment, I was like, you are displaying the thing that Silco's doing. And then Jinx, I feel like that war within herself was the war of her two fathers talking.
Yeah.
As well as like her past sins trying to like catch up with her. But I feel like, one was egging on like, you have to be this type of thing to survive, while the other is like, all you have to be is you. And those two conflicting ideas almost broke her, as we see throughout the series. So I feel like the war is illustrated within them is same war is illustrated within the show, like the under versus the over, like which one will eventually win.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on your thing about Silco and Vander, and Vander possibly being the more hot-headed one. And I definitely see that. If we want to go back to episode 1, when they were first breaking into Jace's apartment, which they didn't know was Jace's apartment. Milo and Clagger were questioning, like, Vi's like, should we even be breaking in here? And then Vi's like, come on, this is the same thing Vander would have did if he was our age. And while you were explaining it, I was like, I can definitely see Vander being the more hot-headed one. And
so I just feel like at some point, if Silco probably was like Vander's powder, Vander might have been hot-headed enough to be like, I don't want you here anymore, to the point where they actually got into a physical altercation where he almost killed Silco.
Yeah. Ripped his eye out. And I was like, Jesus Christ. So the second... Oh, what's up, Ryan?
Oh. I was going to say, I like that they were basically like each other's yin and yang. Like, you see, it's almost like the cliche trope of their original dynamic was you got the bronze and then you got the brains. However, the bronze shifted more towards the light, the good, lawful side, well, unlawful good. Then you see the brains shift over to the more lawful chaotic. Jay, Portia, probably more so lawful chaotic.
Chaotic neutral?
Chaotic neutral? Yeah.
Chaotic neutral.
And I like that you see that switch, but at the same time, neither Vi nor Powder / Jinx were direct copies of them. Because Vi definitely even though Vander had his big bronzy side, she got to also see mature Vander. And it's almost like that parental mindset where like a parent learns from their mistakes and they try to teach their child everything, but until their child experiences it for themselves, they won't know any better. And I like that we see that dynamic.
I think the perfect example of the Vi being hot-headed just like Vander was, the bar fight. She almost died legitimately. Yes. And the fact that she lived through it almost reinforces of like, I can rush into anything. And then we get to the end and you see exactly the results of what happens when you rush in.
Exactly. But then you got Powder / her evolution into Jinx, and you got this Silco who's so calm and so methodical, planning this stuff out, trying to make his own kingdom. But then it's funny because he loves Jinx. So it make even though it's from like this toxic, manipulative kind of almost look kind of inappropriate love, it makes me wonder what exactly did he care for about her?
I think
Like, did he see a lot of himself in her? Because I
I
didn't
think
necessarily
he
get
was
the answer to that.
projecting a lot. My thing was, I felt like he was projecting a lot onto Jinx.
Yeah.
Because the scene that I want to bring up is when Jinx finds out that Vi is alive. And
Mm-hmm.
she is under the impression that Silco has lied to her for the past several years about it. And he's like, to calm her down, he was like, remember who took you in. Remember who's raised you, who's took care of you. I'm the only person who cares about you. Everyone else betrays us. Vi is not here for you. She's here for this stone. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, he cares about her, but he's doing it in such a way that is manipulative.
Yeah, I was about to say
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally think Silco was trying to make her into a weapon. That's just what came of his care, because he was projecting
Exactly.
because he saw so much of his younger self in Powder probably, and he was like, I know what that resulted in for me. I'm not gonna let that result into what happened to you. So I'm gonna make you tougher. And he never did
Yeah.
it, and from what it looks like, he never did it in like a forceful way. Because when he was like, we're gonna remake you. I thought there was a moment. There was a moment where I was like, he's about to forcefully put her under this water, like he was, but he calmly, like, baptismal, just dipped her
Yeah.
in.
He did basically
Yeah,
baptize
and I
her.
was like, I was like, that, if anything, this shows how caring he is with Jinx. Like he's not doing anything out of malice. He's not doing anything to egg her on to be a killer. It's more of just like he understands what you have to do to survive in this world.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be that you need to be violent, and that, or at least how in his thought process, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think he truly cared for her. It's just, he was
Same.
messed up because of the world.
I think another
Mm-hmm.
scene like that, I guess the first scene where you see that Silco is more caring for Jinx is when Savika comes in, when after Jinx basically blew up that whole airship, let it loose. Savika comes in and she's complaining about Jinx and telling him what happened. So he was like, okay, she leaves. And Jinx has been listening the whole time. And he's like, what happened? Well, you heard what happened. I was like, nah, I want to hear it from you. And then when she drops down and tells him about it, he doesn't get angry like we would think Silco would. But he listens to her and he tells her, take some time. Doesn't reprimand her, doesn't fuss at her, just go to your room, take a time out. It's all good.
He got some good fatherly traits.
Yeah.
some,
No, I'm saying he's a
some.
good. What I'm saying is he's a good dad, but I think the thing is the society. Like I said, he's a product of his environment. The Undercity is
Yeah.
not kind.
Mm-hmm.
The world is
Yeah.
not kind. He's not gonna. If 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 Silco was probably like in the Overcity, he probably would not have Jinx and him. Probably would have had a very nice, normal relationship. Jinx would have became an inventor probably, but that's not
Mm-hmm.
that's not the cards that was handed.
Mm-hmm. So the next dynamic I want to get into, I'm looking at the time and we might have to make a part 2 for this, but we'll see. The next dynamic I wanted to get into,
Ooh.
and we've already started discussing this, but to really dive into it, is Vi and Jinx. So Vi and Jinx, when we first meet them, they have the sisterly love, and Vi's more of the protector of the group, the pillar of the group, and we see Powder heavily depending on Vi. Because going back to what McMillian said, she's in this group where everybody has their skill. Vi is the leader, basically the fighter. You have Claggers, the muscle. You have Milo, the lockpick. And then you have Powder. I think the dynamic definitely switch in episode 3. But then when we get into the time skip, yes, we see Powder has changed into Jinx and the hard things, but for me, the character situation didn't really hit for me until they found out that each other were alive. Because once Vi found out that Powder was alive, I would say that both of them felt the guilt that both of them felt previously just amplified by like 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, Vi feels guilty for everything that Powder does. Definitely not her fault, but she feels responsible because of that she left her.
Mm-hmm.
And then she takes on this hero complex, like I have to save my sister. And to the point that she's running into all of these situations head first without thinking, because she has to fix this thing. She has to get her sister back. If she can get Powder back, then it just fixes her whole situation. And that's what she's hell bent on. So for me, Vi was physically battling her demons through her guilt. If we go to Jinx, for me, I feel like Jinx was mentally battling through her demons. Because as soon as she found out that Vi was back alive, it's even to the point where she's schizophrenic, where she is hearing voices like Milo, and I don't know if she was hearing Clagger too, but I know she was hearing Milo a lot because he was the one that was always talking shit.
Yeah, they show Clagger.
But the negative emotions of her guilt, I felt like was being portrayed through them. And that's really where everything started coming to the head with those emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So
that dynamic, I really like to. I like to have seen, because it was basically, because I think throughout the series, after we find out Jace finds out Vi's still alive, you have the conflict of conscience, and you see that Powder still has somewhat of her. There's still Powder in Jinx, because you see her climb up to that tower and light that flare that Vi gave her. It was like, if you light this ever, I'll come find you no matter where you are. Yep. And it's like, she obviously still cares about her sister. She's having like a hard go about it now. Like, she's obviously thinking she's been dead for so long. And I'm wondering if that's like what inspired her to be like, I need to be this person. Because obviously Vi was her strength before, like a protector.
And she even mentions it like in the last episode where she does her whole Joker dinner party thing. And Vi's so caught up in that I should have never left you, and Jinx like, you didn't leave me. You were with me the whole time.
So it's like that, the dynamic of her guilt, and then Jinx's own guilt, the eating, the thing that's eating away at both of them, is an interesting parallel, because one is hitting the other a lot harder with Jinx's whole like her failure of trying to, trying to do good, but it turning out so much worse, is the whole reason the current her exists. It's like, can you even wipe away that? And then Vi is like, I feel responsible for creating you, which in reality, that's not fully true.
Yep.
Because it's like they're prisons of their own mind almost, right? Like, for one to free the other has to free themselves, but they don't see it that way.
Yeah.
In terms of their dynamic, what I touched on earlier about seeing Vi's experience, I don't know how many people y'all know who have like been in prison or in jail, but when they get into that when they go into prison and you look up the psychology behind someone in there, their life is literally on pause, and they feel like that mentally, emotionally, is on pause. When they come out, they feel like the world is still what it used to be, and the shock, it's like a culture shock of seeing how much has changed. And I like that they executed that so well with Vi, and it tied into Pito because why did I say Pito? My bad. It tied into Powder. She's almost as crazy as Pito. It ties into Powder slash Jinx's split personality setup because Jinx has evolved from that entire experience. She had a mental break, and that was the birth of Jinx. But Powder's still locked in because she got this whole schizophrenic kind of thing setup going on in her head. And it's funny because Vi looks at her and it's like, I don't see Jinx. I see Jinx, and I feel like it's my fault. I want to fix this, and I feel like we can go way back to Powder. But Vi has also not experienced none of what Jinx has been doing.
I
She hasn't
think
seen.
I was gonna say the other thing. I think she was also in denial of who Jinx was, because she had Caitlyn telling her that Jinx is bad news. When she had her running with Ekko, Ekko is like, one of your friends from back in the day is trying to tell you, like, yo, your sister is not the same. And even
Exactly.
when they fought the Firelights, when they reunited and they fought the Firelights, she got to see up front who Powder was as Jinx. And her face, you could tell that it affected her, but then she completely went back into, I need to save my sister. This is my fault. So I don't think it's that she didn't see it. I think that she saw it and that she was in denial.
I think the perfect example of that is episode 9, when she's still trying to talk to her as if that's her little sister, and then but she has a momentary break where she was like, "Where's Caitlyn?" And she was, "Oh, I visited your girlfriend earlier. I made her a snack."
Yeah.
And she does the greatest fake out of all time. But like that, I feel like that is a perfect example of what you're saying, Phobe, like her denial, because up until that point, she was talking to her like your little sister, and then she actually got scared of the possibility because she realized in her head that this is, at the end of the day, this isn't the person this isn't my little sister no more.
Like, you are batshit crazy.
Yeah, because if she was fully operating under the guise of like, you are you no matter what, I don't think the idea of her chopping off Caitlyn's head would even like cross her mind. But it did, and that's the fact, and that shows how deep into the denial she was or is. Because I don't know what's going season 2 is going to be like.
I don't know. I feel like the end of season 9 said it. I cannot see her coming
Still
back
being in
season
denial after
2
that?
and still being in denial after that. Like, your sister just blew everyone to hell. It's a wrap.
Yeah. And it's also because she had a little bit of enforcement in her head. Well, not enforcement. People try to tell her, but she, in her mind, it's like, oh, Silco's is the reason. Silco's the enemy. He's controlling her. I left her. Like, she honestly forcibly made excuses as to why
But
Jinx can be
she did that
saved
when
and
they
turn
were
to Powder.
younger. She did that when they were younger too, and that's going back to what you were saying about with her being in prison so long, she wasn't moving with the rest of the world.
She was trapped in that mindset.
Because when they were kids, she knew that Powder had her shortcomings, but she would never allow anyone to blame Powder. That Powder's shortcomings was always someone else. Or even when she told Milo, like, worry about yourself. Powder's my business. And she took that mentality when she got out as well, that she blamed half of Jinx's stuff on her, most if not all, and then the other half was, this is Silco's fault.
She didn't want to give Powder no accountability.
Yeah, well, she gonna have to give it to her now, cause She
She's a
gonna have to let
terrorist.
her
She's a
take the cake.
full-fledged terrorist.
She is for real. So the next character dynamic I want to get into is my token lesbian couple, Caitlyn and Vi.
Cupcake and Vi.
Cupcake and Vi. Caitlyn and Vi. But I will say, fun fact, I did find Arcane because they showed the lesbos. And they did. I was on TikTok. I was on TikTok and a little video came up of the little snippet of her calling her Cupcake, and I was like, are they gay? And I was like, and then it started blowing up on Twitter, and I was like, okay, seems like it's really good, and there's lesbians. I'll check it out. But despite them being lesbians, I think their character dynamic is something interesting to talk about as well. And there are a few parallels with their relationship as well. And it's the Undercity Piltover alliance that never works, the oil and water. So we first get it with Vander and Grayson, which feels like that old school type of alliance, like you keep your people in Piltover and I'll keep my people in the Undercity. We only talk when we need to. I'll handle my business if you handle your business. Which turns out it didn't work because the kids from the Undercity went to Piltover, caused some trouble, and then that whole thing. But then we go into more of a blackmail, you work for me, darker relationship with Silco and Marcus. To the point that Silco just showed up in Marcus's home playing blocks with his daughter.
You want to talk about gangster? You want to talk about gangster?
Right. Like, he tested his gangster like, I own you. I own you. I think that whole scene when he was like, your dad told me that so-and-so and her dad went on a trip, but the daughter never made it. He was like, how would you feel if you never made it to your daddy? And I was like, that is the most undercover threat ever.
And it was played so well.
It was played so well. But that was another relationship that another Undercity Piltover alliance that did not work for obvious reasons. But now we get to Vi and we get to Caitlyn. And I think the difference with their dynamic versus the other ones is that they start understanding each other's life circumstances. When Caitlyn comes down to the Undercity, her visit is not like an original enforcer visit. Because all of the times we've seen the enforcers come down there, they're throwing people through windows. They have their little clone mask on, terrorizing people. But she goes down there and she actually sees she goes to the darkest parts of the Undercity and she sees like how the council and how Piltover has neglected them to the point that she feels for them. Like the conversation that she was having with Ekko when they were discussing the gemstone, she was like, if you don't want to give this stone back, I don't blame you. I've only been here for like, a couple hours. And from what I've seen, she said you would be well within your right to keep this gemstone and to not give me shit and send me on my way. And then Vi, she goes to Piltover, but I guess the only thing that I could say about Vi being in Piltover is that she sees that some upper city people aren't bad. And from her experience with Caitlyn, and then to the fact that she takes a step further and makes an alliance with Jace. So we see them stepping into each other's worlds and taking a step further into how they live and who these people are, which have been different from the alliances that we've seen in the series.
To add to that, Another alliance that you should mention, I think, is Jace and Vander.
Jason Vander? Or Jason Victor?
Victor, sorry, I said Vander. I meant Victor. Victor.
I was gonna get to that. That was gonna be my next dynamic.
I was only saying because they're also, you know,
yep.
Piltover versus Undercity person.
But what I wanted to get into for their dynamic is that it's one of those things to where you guys, it's one of those I'm glad you're not like the rest of them type things.
I think
it's like, what it turned into, because when you first meet Victor, he's living up top, so as viewers we assume that he's from Piltover, but then you find out he's from the Undercity, and you see that his demeanor and the way that he carries himself is completely different from how we see Vi and the rest of the people in the Undercity carry themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And their dynamic works for a while until all of the problems start stirring up, and Jace immediately starts basically stereotyping him. Not directly, but indirectly through his anger and the way that he started seeing the Undercity when all of the shit started going down.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, you could bring it up in the terms of like the oil and water not mixing, because eventually, I mean, like up to a point they were good, and then, you know, stuff like you said, started getting rocky water. But as far as the dynamic between Vi and Kate, I enjoyed their characters. It's the whole, but in the sense of like I see how you live, you see how I live, and now we somewhat understand each other more.
But I don't think it was that. Yeah.
Huh? I was about to say, but at the end of the day, it's also like it's only a surface level view of it.
That's what I was gonna say. I totally agree with that. Like, you see how we live, but you don't. We've scratched the surface.
The surface, yeah. Like you can see that we don't have, because of the council and everything. Us and the Undercity, we don't get all the benefits that you receive. You don't get all that, but at the same time, you're not seeing the prejudice that fully happens. Mm-hmm. You're not seeing the reason why people are taking Shimmer. Like, you can understand it, but you're not seeing the full thing. Like, I think something that's going to result in season 2, or like a good example of this might happen in season 2, is the effect of where we left Heimdall and Ekko.
Yep.
Because he actually is entrenching himself in it now. But like Caitlyn and Vi, they spent a day in each other's world, maybe less.
Yeah.
So it's like we got surface level views of how people work. You let a fancy council decide everything. We have to fend for ourselves down here. You know what I'm saying? Like, so. Mm-hmm. But in reality, they both had their struggles and not. Granted, one struggle is far greater than the other. There's no contest. Yeah. But like, I feel at the end of the day, the reason they're not mixing, or the whole thing with the oil and water not mixing, is that neither of the other can fully get entrenched into each other's lives. They could have the possibility of a chance, but that would take so long.
Yeah. And I think just because what happens at the end of the series, I think that understanding is going to be even harder to find. Based on, that was one of my things, that who all made it out of that. And depending on who made it and who's just flat out dead, it's going to weigh a lot on that dynamic.
I think I can guess, but that's only because I know a little bit about the game. But we don't gotta talk about that.
But we did talk about Jason Victor. My only thing was that theirs turned into, you're for someone being from the Undercity, you're not so bad. I'm glad you're not like the rest of those guys from the Undercity. And then it immediately flipped, like the scene where Jace had ordered the search and seizure on the bridge, and Victor was gone through all that. So he goes in there, he's like, do you know how this makes me look? And he was like, I was going to get stuff for our research. And he was like, what were you doing in the Undercity? And then Victor's like, what's wrong with the Undercity.
He's like, they're
And
dangerous.
then
He's like, I'm
and
from
Jace's face, and this is the other thing I'm saying about the character emotion. He looked at him like, "Yo, are you stupid?" And I was like, he is about to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And he says it. He was like, they're dangerous. And then Victor's like, yo, I'm from the Undercity.
But I think the thing about Jace specifically, and this is why I like him as a character, he's willing to admit his faults and reevaluate. Like, he fully readjusted after that moment and was like, bro, I'm sorry, you right, I'm tripping. Like, he granted he got pulled every which way, but at the same time, I was like, if I was put in Jace's situation, I don't think I'd fully know what to do. Like, like, you got everybody's talking in your ear right now, and then you have so much responsibility to the point where you've never had to deal with it before. Like, it's the ramp up that he had to do is insane. So I can see how he made all those leaps and bounds. But I'm like, at least the fact of like what I really liked about Jason is that he's a character that readjusted every chance he got met with when he realized he was wrong. Like, immediately after making that mistake in the Silco factory, he was like, look, I see why this idea might have needed to happen, but it's not worth the outcome.
I was about to bring that up. That's with him when he unalived that kid in that factory.
Oh my!
And immediately he was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. And I felt him on that. And then Vi's thing, she was like, and that's where we were coming from, like the products of your environment. And Vi's like, okay, I see dead kids all the time. Like, next stop, let's go.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know what's funny about the Jason Victor dynamic that I'm glad they didn't touch on as much, because you see it touched on so much? It's how them being both inventors, and they're basically like kind of like equal stakeholders in the tech that they was creating. Even though Jace was of course the face and he was the one that everybody saw, even though Victor was, I don't want to say he was the brains, Jace obviously played a big part in the creation of that too, but he definitely polished a lot of it up. I like that it didn't turn into the cliche, oh my gosh, I'm jealous of your popularity dynamic, versus it became just a battle of morals and ideals.
Victor was fighting to survive. He didn't have time to worry about popularity.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm glad that became the focus.
Or I'm glad it didn't turn into, we're partners, but I'm the face, so screw you.
Yeah, get in line.
Hex Tech is mine. We see that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, like we see that a lot. I'm glad that they kind of strayed away and showed us the opposite side of how that can happen.
Yeah.
But I disconnect when y'all talking about Vi and Cupcake. Y'all still on that?
Oh no,
no.
I think
we're done talking about my token lesbians.
But one thing that I really like on all these relationships, it really shows something that you kind of see in the real world, but not as much unless you really explore. It's like social class hierarchies. Like we see a lot of different types of ideals, and can I use that P word in, I'm not going to use it. Like we can see the difference of ideals and like hate based on like different statuses and everything. But I really like that they really explored the social class hierarchies in this world, and how someone from a lower class and someone from an upper class interacting, whether it's intimately, romantically, business wise, or politically, how it's a lot of, I don't really trust you, but more so because I don't really know what you all about, and I don't think you can understand what I'm about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that almost every single one of those relationships touched on that.
And they all felt real too, because a lot of times I feel like in shows they try to inflate it so much to the point where it doesn't make sense. But like these felt real, like because Caitlyn and Vi had a whole bunch of conversations, I think, about their dynamic, right? And it never felt like contrived. Never felt like they were like, let's just have them argue for argument's sake. Like,
it felt organic.
Or let's not have them talk because we just want them to be lesbians. You know how they try to force
character relationships?
The forced character relationships, especially LGBTQ plus relationships in shows. But this felt genuine. Even though they knew each other for like, what, 2-3 days? Very short amount of time. The conversations that they had felt genuine. The understandings, though very minor, felt genuine. The arguments that they had, like McMillian was saying, wasn't just them arguing just to have an argument.
True.
So I definitely agree about the relationships. I enjoyed all of them. So what I want to do right here, guys, I want to stop before we move into the next part of the spoiler section, just for the sake of time. So thank you guys for doing this first part of the review with me. Thanks to everybody who has listened to the first part of our Arcane review. For part 2, we're going to discuss highlights from the Arcane series, as well as talk about what we're expecting and if we have any theories for season 2. So you can find us on social media, on Instagram at the Blerd Mob Pod. That's at TheBlerdMobPod. You can find us on Twitter at the Blerd Mob. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube at the Blerd Mob Podcast. So thank you guys for listening. See you guys in part 2. And this is the mob checking out. Peace.
Hands up. If you loving where you at, stand 10 toes down. Shawty ain't no looking mad. You can let them haters hate when they asking why I'm smiling. I just tell them life's great.